Howdy, Sergey from Core here. In this tutorial, I would like to dive a little bit deeper into different options for exporting your Revit project to Ellipse. I'll be talking more about advanced features, so if you're not familiar with the simple workflow for using an Ellipse exporter, we do have a video on the subject, so I encourage you to check it out first. But as a quick reminder, in the default configuration, Ellipse exporter allows you to select models that you want to upload as 3D views to the Ellipse web app, or your sheets, which are just your Revit sheets like this one behind the Ellipse exporter window right now. Now, you can also either select an existing notebook that you want to push your assets to, or you can also click this plus button and enter a name for a new notebook, and then just push all of your assets here. So as a matter of fact, let's just create a new notebook and call it Revit Advanced. So now we'll be able to push all of our assets to this new notebook that we just created. Now, in order to access additional settings for the Ellipse exporter, let's click on these three dots over here and look at the menu that pops up. So first of all, we can log out from Ellipse if you want to log out for any reason, or if you want to log out so that somebody else could log in with a different account, or maybe you have a professional account and a personal account. This is how you log out from Ellipse. You can also click on the Open Web App button to just spin up your default browser and go to Ellipse Web App in a more straightforward, convenient way. Also, we can access the exports folder. So let's take a look at what that is. Every time Ellipse does a Revit export, it will create a temporary directory that is going to be a destination for all of the models and drawing files and data files that Ellipse has to save to disk first before uploading to the Ellipse web app. Now, the default behavior is to delete that temporary folder after the export is complete. So if you're opening the Scratch folder for the first time and you never changed any settings in your Ellipse exporter, chances are that this directory is entirely empty for you. However, it is possible to ask Ellipse exporter to keep those files after the upload process. And this is just so that you could see what actually got exported. You could use those files. It converts every model and every sheet in Revit into a 3DM file that you can use for something else. But this is a very nice tool for both debugging, but also converting your assets into the Rhino-friendly format. Now, the last option in this menu is Preferences. And this allows us to access some hidden functionality inside of the Ellipse exporter. So first of all, up top, we have the Reset to Default button, so don't worry about changing anything. You can always go back to the default setup. But here in the Tabs section, you will see that aside from models and sheets, we also have views and data. So let's turn those on, and immediately you can see that those tabs get added to our UI. Scrolling down, we have an option for filtering attributes. This is duplicating this toggle down below in the main page, but I'll talk about this a little bit more later. And here's our Keep Output Files toggle. So by default, it's disabled. If you switch it on, then everything that gets written into your Scratch folder will be there once the upload is complete. We don't really need this right now, so I will turn this back off. Now, let's take a look at the two new tabs that we just added. So Views allows us to access individual views inside of our Revit document. So unlike Sheets, which are essentially views placed on a sheet of paper on a layout in Revit, Views allow us to export individual drawings as sort of viewports in Ellipse. And let's also look at the Data tab. So here you will see two sections. You will see Data Sources and Advanced. So in the Advanced section, the only option is Remove Empty. This essentially filters out attributes that have empty values or null values to help you keep your data set nice and clean. But if you do want those values, just uncheck this checkbox. Now, with regards to data sources, you'll see that all of this is grayed out. This is because we haven't selected any models, views, or sheets. So if I go to models and I select something and I go back to data, you'll see that models is now editable and views and sheets aren't. So let's just select the view and we'll select the sheet right here. So now I can decide whether I want to export data from any of these data sources. And this is useful because maybe I do want to export the data from my drawings, but I don't care about the data contained in my 3D model. Maybe, my drawings are just small details and my 3D models are models of the entire project, and I'm just interested in the data contained in the detailed drawings. So this is kind of why this setting is there. Now, another thing that I would like to show you is this saved asset selections section over here. Now, when you're exporting drawings and models for a large project, conceivably you would be exporting different iterations of the same selection of assets, right? So for instance, maybe I want to export my overall 3D view, my living room view, and my kitchen, for instance. And then in the views, I would like to export these drawings. I'm just randomly selecting some views and randomly selecting some sheets. So let's say these are the assets that I'm interested in. And every time I do an Ellipse export, I would like to not have to select all of them over and over again, because this could get pretty tedious, especially if you're doing this many times. Now, this is why saved asset selections is here. So I can just go ahead and click Save, and this will bring up this little window here, and I can name it. So this is my sample export. So I'll hit Save, and here you will see that we just added a new saved asset selection called sample export. And now let's do a little experiment. So I'm just going to close the Ellipse exporter window, and I'm going to open it again. Now, as you can see, the settings in the Ellipse exporter are persistent. So we enabled our View tab and our Data tab, and these are still here. We can switch to Revit Advanced Notebook once again. But our selections are gone, and your selections will be gone every time you reopen the Ellipse exporter. But this is why the saved asset selections is here. We can just click on the selection that we saved and click this load button. And in one click, we just loaded the combination of assets that we were interested in. So this is a very convenient way for exporting specific subsets of your assets. And you could also save multiple different selections. So maybe you have an export selection for your mechanical, or for structural, or for architectural drawings if you happen to have everything in one model. Or maybe you're exporting it from multiple different Revit files into the same notebook. So this is a very nice way of kind of keeping your selections persistent between multiple exports. And of course, for any selection, we can go ahead and click Delete. So now the selection is gone. And if we save a new one, so let's hit Save. I'm just going to call it Sample. We can also edit the name of the selection. So if I have this selected here, I can click Edit and say Sample Selection Save. So now we effectively renamed that saved file. And then we have the Filter Attributes toggle down below. So this is something that I mentioned previously with regards to filtering attributes. So by default, this is enabled. And when we click Upload, this will allow you to decide which attributes and which parameters you want exported from your BIM model, because once again, in large Revit files and large projects, you will have a ton of BIM data, and not always you need all of it at once. It can get pretty cluttered. So it does make sense to kind of be selective with regards to the attributes that you want to upload. If you want to skip this process, you can just turn off this toggle, and what this will do is it will skip that attribute selection step entirely. So we will just proceed right ahead with the upload, and all of the attributes will be exported without anything being omitted. So instead of doing that, I'm just going to keep this on and hit upload. So this might take a little bit of time because I selected quite a few 3D views and sheets and individual views. So let's just give Revit a moment to export all of this to disk. Okay, so now that our local export is complete, we are presented with the Select Attributes dialog. And what it allows us to do is look at all of the parameters that got extracted out of the BIM elements inside of the drawings and models that we're uploading to Ellipse, and decide which of those attributes we want to keep and have them added to the Ellipse dataset, and which ones we want to get rid of. And of course, we could just go ahead and click Continue and carry on with the upload while keeping all of the data, and Ellipse would handle this perfectly fine. We could even skip this step entirely, as I mentioned before, by switching the Filter Attributes toggle to the off position in the previous view. But there are situations with larger models and larger Revit files where it makes sense to be a little bit more selective about the data that you're uploading, just in the interest of keeping things from getting too cluttered. And since we're here, we can just scroll down in this list and uncheck or check everything that we like. I do want to point out that certain attributes are protected. So Ellipse ID, for example, is grayed out because it's a crucial attribute for the correct operation of Ellipse, and you can't get rid of it. Another such protected attribute is category. So if we search for it here, it's also grayed out. You can't uncheck it, but everything else you're able to turn on and off as you please. If we want to turn off all of the data, there is a Select All or None checkbox up here, and we can just click it and everything will get cleared out. So this is a nice way of getting rid of all of the attributes if you don't want any attributes at all. And of course, we can just search for specific attributes and look up and down the list, but it is quite an extensive list of attributes, so it might be a little bit overwhelming to look for things that you want here. So the other way of doing this is by switching this Combine tabs toggle to the off position. And what it does is breaks up our parameters and our attributes into groups based on the Revit category. So now we're only looking at the parameters that belong to the casework Revit category. And we can just go down this list, and everything here is sorted in the alphabetical order, so we can easily identify which categories we're interested in. And if we want to uncheck or check everything inside of the specific category, we shouldn't use the Select All None checkbox, because that unchecks everything in every category. Instead, we can use this internal All checkbox. So this only affects the specific category that you're in. And once again, we can decide what we want here, what we don't want. Another thing that I would like to show you is this menu down below. And this should look familiar to you because it looks very similar to the Save Assets menu that we saw in the previous screen. And this allows you to save your selections for your attributes, which is also very useful in situations where you're exporting the same set of drawings multiple times as you go through different iterations. And it is very nice not to have to re-filter your attributes every single time you do the upload. So you can save your attribute selections and load them back in. So we can try that. So I'm just going to randomly uncheck some attributes here and then hit save. So let's call it my selection. hit save, and I'm just going to reset this for demonstration purposes. And once I select from the dropdown my selection and click load, here we have all of the attributes and all of the selections loaded back in. So this is a very nice way to establish persistence for your selections across multiple exports. Also, if you're working, once again, in a multidisciplinary setting, so maybe somebody is exporting an MEP drawing set and someone else is exporting a structural drawing set, it might make sense to include different sets of attributes for each one of those tasks. Like the set of attributes that are exported for the MEP set of drawings might be different from what you would export for architectural set, for example. So you could establish certain presets for the attributes for that specific task and just have them saved in Ellipse and maybe shared with your colleagues if you like. And that is just a very nice way, once again, to quickly grab only the data that you want for the specific upload. And here, let's just turn everything back on and hit continue. So now Ellipse Exporter is collecting all of the files that we've exported locally, our drawings, our 3D models, and the data attributes that we've selected, and is uploading them to the Ellipse platform. Once that's done, we'll be able to go to our notebook and start putting together our pages and setting up our layouts. All right, folks, this concludes our overview of advanced settings for an Ellipse upload from Revit. If you were looking for a quick getting started guide instead, or if you want to learn more about setting up pages and layouts in the Ellipse web app, make sure to check out our other Ellipse-related videos on the channel. I thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you around. Bye-bye.